Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we're going to look at the weekly metagame breakdown for the historic best of 3 format. Little correction from my previous note, the qualifier weekend is the November qualifier. That's going to be historic, but the play-in is at the end of October, which is very confusing timeline-wise. But it's going to be historic. We got the new anthologies in. For those who weren't aware, there was also a leaked Anthologies 3 that's already on the client and you can craft. They haven't published any information on it yet though, so we don't know what's going to be banned in historic as they did with like the other anthologies. So craft at your own risk at this point, but you can search and find it. We'll take a look in a second what's in there. But we're getting the data from UntapGG, what you see on the screen. Companion tool tracks user win rates. You can track your own decks, stuff like that. So I'll paste all these deck lists in the video description. The link for Untapped is there. You can follow it there. While you're there, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe on the video. We're almost at 20,000. We're getting there. Was trying for the end of summer. We have like a week left before it becomes fall, but be appreciative of any push. And there's a new hype feature on YouTube. You can hype my videos. It costs you nothing, and it just helps with the reach and helps me push out more of this content to more people, which is greatly appreciated. So right now, like popularity of the day, Diamond and Mythic, there's a lot of Eldrazi being played. The big new deck as well is the Jund Goyfs deck, or kind of 2015 Jund that's been reimagined, where there's a lot of variations to it. I have a video up on my YouTube on it as well. The deck is super fun to play. I'm really excited to kind of explore that space. So in terms of the anthology, I apologize for it being slightly grayscaled or blurred. It's kind of how it appears in the client. So some notable cards that we're getting, obviously Emrakul the Aeon's Torn likely will potentially be banned, maybe. You have Batterskull as well as Cauldron Complete for Stoneforge decks. Chain Lightning is interesting if we see that being banned or not. We have Broadside Bombardiers, which usually sees play in Legacy Stompy. Noble Hierarch that also joins Ignoble Hierarch. Swathi Voidwalker, very strong card here for like mono black decks. It's Graveyard Hate kind of mixed in. Necromancy is an interesting one to see if we get this as another reanimation effect. Crop Rotation probably not as relevant without things like Strip Mine, but could see play maybe in mono green Devotion to find Nykthos. Yavimaya we got, and then Assault Strobe could see play at more in the best of one. There's a red green kind of prowess all in deck with like Slick Shots and stuff like that. Could see some play in that respect there. We're getting more pieces for the kind of Death and Taxes shell, but they won't give us Aether Vial, which is super annoying. So just kind of looking, we'll take a look mainly Diamond and Mythic, where we have 3,600 games played in the last week. There's a couple decks I just want to feature at the end that were in Platinum. Small sample size, 15 games, so some of these win rates will be quite high if it's kind of congregated in one or two players playing a particular deck. So Jund Goyfs, this one's at 87%. Again, there's a lot of different ways to kind of build the deck, but this here is kind of built around Goyf. You have Pyrogoyf and Barogoyf. Some lists will play the OG Tarmogoyf, but a lot of it is built around Barogoyf and Pyrogoyf. So Barogoyf is 3 mana, the Tarmogoyf text, lifelink, death touch. When it deals damage, it mills that many cards, and then you can put a creature from among them into your hand, so self-enabling that way. You have Pyrogoyf, which is very strong. When it or another Goyf comes into play, it deals damage equal to its power to any target, so you can just go face. With Fable, it's nuts. I had a game where I just like copied Pyrogoyf, did 5, there's 2 copies in play, so 10 damage to the face, and then attack with the haste version, which is pretty nutty. Not all the lists are playing Fable. Some are playing Jarsil in some combinations. Crucius in here. That kind of helps you find your Pyrogoyf. This version is on Thoughtseize as well as Fatal Push Cutdown. Cutdown's usually a little bit of an odd one, and is playing 7 Accelerants, really trying to go 1 to 3 mana as consistent as possible. Ignoble Hierarch's really good at just kind of fixing your mana in the deck. This particular sideboard is interesting as well. We have Haywire Might, Stone of Erich for any sort of like energy decks that are sacrificing stuff that gets exiled. Surgical for combo hate. Brotherhood's End is good against Affinity or the Go Wide decks. Culling Ritual is good against Auras. Energy, stuff like that. Minsc and Boo for the more controlling matchup. To me, the sideboard seems to be lacking an answer for Eldrazi. You'll see in some other lists, Cleansing Wildfire, Dampening Sphere, Stone Rain, all options to kind of bring in because that deck can go over the top of you. There's this other version as well that here. So this one is by Shioriko. They went 22-4. So very similar. This one's on Grist. You usually see some Grist. I started off with a version of this list and then kind of tweaked it to my own liking. I ended up cutting the Crucius and one Jarsoul and instead played the full Fables. I just found it a little bit easier to kind of churn through your deck. So very similar concept. Meltdown's good against the Affinity decks. Culling Ritual, again, for the go-wide decks. This has Surgical for Graveyard Hate. I was playing Soul Guide Lantern, but similar kind of ideas. Just a couple more Thoughtseize for when you need more hand hate. Dampening Sphere for Eldrazi. Extract the Confession can be useful against decks playing like Auras. You can make them sack the biggest thing, gets around targeted removal protection. Crocs is good in the mirror just as a grindy element that you can get back out of the graveyard. In terms of where I was at, so the video is up on YouTube playing version very similar to this, but the latest I'm 2-1 with this one and like high mythic. Didn't record one of the games, and the last game was against Affinity where I had them pretty much beat. I went Meltdown to blow up some lines in their stuff into Culling Ritual, and then I had an active Fable where I drew lands for like 4 turns in a row and kind of died. But this is kind of the configuration I'm at. 1 Birds with the Noble, and then Culling Rituals, Torpor Orb for any sort of ETB shenanigans. Your stuff's not really ETB focused other than the Pyrogoyf, but in some of those matchups it just kind of takes over. Things like Val, Energy, it's very good. But that one's kind of a flex spot you can get rid of. Dampening Sphere for Eldrazi, just some more targeted removal. Ghost Vacuum, Haywire Might. The other card I was considering was Perleus Iteration. Just replacing one of these just for some more card advantage. I found a lot of times you're relying on top deck, and while you have some churn, if you're just drawing lines, it's not the greatest there. So this is on my Untap profile. If you want to find it, it's always in the link, but I'm not going to link this. The YouTube video is also up. So Gruul Eldrazi, this one's at 91%. So some of these are changing in real time because the Gen 1 was higher when I pulled it. So again, there's a few different versions of Eldrazi that we'll take a look at today. All are built around the fact that you have access to Eldrazi Temple, which is a soul land producing 2 mana for Eldrazi spells. Ugin's Labyrinth is another way to get ahead in terms of mana. This one's, I would say, the more aggressive variant. You have Linebreaker that can push through a bunch of haste damage. Glaring Fleshraker pings and makes you more tokens. Hit That Heralds is also a lord, so your Eldrazi spawns become attackers, which is very strong. Thought-Knot Seer to attack your opponent's hand. Sowing Microspawn, blow up their lands, tutor your own. So lets you get like Ghost Quarter. Seen some of these lists play Bajuka Bog main. Just gives you some flexibility there. Gemstone Cavern's another way on the play to, or on the draw to get a land ahead of turn. Kind of play in that respect. Blast Zone for go-wide decks. Thief of Existence as some removal. Dismember as some removal. Wastegate Battle Mage, flexible to be kicked, deals with artifacts, enchantments, or bounce. Warping Whale for some removal, counter sorceries like Sweepers. Pretty much Soulless Jailer, things that are trying to cheat into play stuff. Flute as a tax effect. Grafdigger's Cage for graveyard decks. Surgical. Cage also works with stuff like against Val, against Greensun, Zenith, Coco, stuff of that nature. Surgical for combo hate. There's the Simic Eldrazi, which I'd say is a bigger kind of mana deck. We got with the Anthology 1 the Talisman cycle, which helps the deck just have another 2-drop. It was like Mind Stone before, but this does the job of being 2 mana ramp that also can be color fixing, which can be relevant. You also have Utopia Sprawl for more acceleration, so a lot of ways to get ahead on mana. Your top end, you have some Ugins and Emeralds, and then the bounce effect out of Ugin's Binding. Notably, you can evoke Null Drifter, which will trigger the Binding second case from your graveyard, so you can cast it for free. We see some utility cards like Sanctum of Ugin that can be sacked to find more bigger spells. Cavern in here, Bajuka Bog. Ugin for the kind of go wide decks, just energy, stuff like that. It's a little slow, but it's also just a nice catch-up effect. Torpor for ETB, Stonebrain for combo hate, Flute, tax effect, activated abilities, Consign for the mirror, and then Chalice for the low mana, the Lurrus deck, stuff like that. And the original deck here is from Altherix. This player here, Samocha Guns, 180 with it as well, but this is an Echoes of Eternities version of the deck. So Echoes is a Kindred enchantment, Eldrazi, so it does get the cost reduction from Eldrazi Temple, so you could pay 2 mana into it, similar to Kozilek's Command. And then whenever a colorless spell triggers, you get an additional trigger, and then whenever you cast a colorless spell, you copy it, get new targets, meaning you get double the Eldrazi line breakers, you get double the abilities. Faceless Agent is colorless and is a shapeshifter, so counts as an Eldrazi, so fetches you 2 Eldrazi. Glaring Fleshraker, double the pings, double the scions, so just kind of pushing through a whole bunch of damage, so it's a little bit more of a combo aggro version of the deck. Stone Rain for the mirror, Cindermaw for like Val combo, any sort of life gain, Surgical for graveyard hate, and then Shove Aside as cheap removal. Boros Energy, so this one's at 83%, so this is not a Jingantha version, but a Lurrus-less version. There's still kind of like a Lurrus version you can play. This one's playing Flage and Fable. We're seeing White Orchard Phantom, just as a way to blow up like Eldrazi lands, which has some utility. I think the Field of Ruin might be a little ambitious for the deck, but this one here also has like Jolt Awake to bring up your stuff. Unstable Amulet, you have Thraben Charm, just a lot of kind of situational 2-ofs, but you have your kind of pseudo-nerfed package, and then just a Johnny Amped Raptor Bombardment wins games on its own. You have Purge, which is an interesting one, could come in against Affinity. It does hit you, which is a bit of a non-bow, but against Affinity maybe. I would say probably Brotherhood's End's a cleaner answer. White Orchard Phantom deals with more of the dual lands, Invasion for the more controlling decks, Sphere for like big mana or Stormish style decks, Containment Priest, anything that's looking to cheat stuff into play, Surgical, Graveyard Hate, Stone of Arch, the Mirror, Sam combo, anything like that. Fragment as more removal. Boros Auras, so nothing crazy innovative with this, just showing it's still a formidable deck, 80%. Built around Core Spirit Dancer and Light Paws. We're seeing a return to Hushbringer in the main over Amped Raptor, just shutting off ETB style effects, which can be relevant. And then you're basically, with these, slap on a whole bunch of auras, toolbox or draw cards, make a big creature, kill your opponent. Containment Priest, things being cheated into play. Another Hushbringer for ETB. Blessed Alliance. It's a nice one if your opponent's on kind of a one big creature, one big aura kind of pushing through. You can force him to sack that creature, gets around targeted removal. Surgical again, Portable Hold, cheap removal, Needle activated abilities, Lorn's Escape for non-exile removal protection, and Fragment Reality as more removal. Naya Val, 76.5. So this is another deck that can be built a number of different ways. This one is a Birthing Ritual version of the deck. So Birthing Ritual, at your end step, you look at the top 7, then you can sack a creature and then put a creature from among them with mana value X or less, so it's just like toolboxy, kind of Birthing Pod-esque on your end step. The combo for those unfamiliar, Trelisara and Val plus any way to trigger it creates an infinite loop where you gain life, ping, and then you scry, and then gain life, and then ping, and then just kill your opponent that way there. So you have things like Martyr Devotee that can scry. This also fixes your mana a bit. You have your life gain with Guide of Souls as well. So those all kind of work. So kind of have that trigger going. So 6 ways to kind of get the trigger going in that sense. Otherwise, you have the Trap Finder, Unlucky Witness to kind of tutor for your stuff. And then Amped Raptor, Johnny, just so you have your like Energy Shell, Fair Plan, and then Oops combo plan backup. Similar to the Cat combo. When you're on the draw, you can bring in Gemstone over some basic line, or like over the starting towns. Just gets you ahead of the combo earlier. This looks like Lurrus was should be your companion here, not in the sideboard. So that just one thing to note there. Thought Partition as a Thoughtseize style effect in white, Surgical, Seamer cheap removal, Meltdown for Affinity. Speaking of Affinity, so this one's in Platinum, so 88%, 17 games. So the big card here is Drix Interlacer. So starting intensity 0. It's 1 for a 1 mana artifact. And whenever an artifact you control enters, it increases its intensity by 1. You could sack the Interlacer to draw X cards, where X is half the intensity at sorcery speed. This is very strong with Emery. You could just keep bringing it back. The intensity stays on it. So you can just lake in, keep churning through cards. It's another way to draw a bunch of cards in the deck. Keep the fun times going. It's another way to flip Tamiyo. Pinnacle Emissary is the other card in the deck. For 1 mana, you can warp it and then just play a bunch of cheap artifacts to kind of go off. This version notably is only on 1 Mox Amber. I can see more copies of Amber being relevant as well in the deck. With access to Emery and Tamiyo, it's another way to get ahead on mana. Possibly over like a Retrofitter or something. It's also just another 0 that plays nicely with Emissary. Seismic Wave is a sweeper that it deals 2 damage to any target, then 1 damage to any non-target, so energy, stuff like that, the go wide decks. Stone for sack decks, Spell Pierce, Cheap Disruption, Shadow Sphere. In the more aggressive matchups can gain you life, or if they have a lot of chump blockers, it's a way to push through some damage. Needle activated abilities, Consign, good against Eldrazi predominantly. Aether Spell Bomb is a way to bounce against like Auras, and then Tormod's Crypt for Graveyard Hate. And lastly, Izzet Wizards. This one's at 64%. It's doing worse in Diamond rank. It's about 54%. But this one here is, we got the reversion of the Chorus package. So Ribble Shanty again is 1 mana, not 2. Similar cards with intensity that soup up all your choruses. So this scales first time you cast it, deals 2 damage, then 3, 4, 5, whatever, based on intensity to creatures. So it's a scalable damage card, which is very strong for 1 mana. And then it also powers up Hymn to the Ages, which allows you to draw a bunch of cards for 2 mana. It's another strong card to flashback with Dreadhorde Arcanist to keep the good times going. You have access to Swiftspear's Teaching that plays nicely in Curve with Dreadhorde Arcanist. Just gives the next creature you cast haste and prowess, notably prowess stacks. So if you have multiple instances, you get extra damage that way there. Surgical again, Stone, Spell Pierce, Rending Volley for the Auras deck. Also reasonable against energy. You have Fire Magic for the Go Wide decks and Consign for Eldrazi. That's it for the week. Let me know what you've been playing, what you've been liking, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.